Hello and welcome to Earthfile. I am Ayola Kasim. On the 3rd of March 1973, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, that is CITE, was adopted. CITE is a critical international treaty that works to ensure that global trade does not threaten the survival of species in the wild. Starting out small, the treaty today boasts 180 governments as parties, that is, members of the treaty that agree to comply with its requirements, and it is recognized as one of the most important and effective mechanisms regulating the practice of conservation in the world. The United Nations General Assembly last December declared March 3rd as World Wildlife Day, a day, according to the UN, to celebrate the many beautiful and varied forms of wild fauna and flora, and to raise awareness of the multitude of benefits that conservation provides to the people. Last year, the United Nations Environment Programme published a report on the illicit trade in apes. According to the report, Nigeria's cross-river gorillas are some of those that may be lost before 2030. The illegal trade that sees almost 3,000 live great apes lost from the forests of Africa and Southeast Asia each year is increasingly impacting wild populations as links to organized crime grow stronger. Stolen apes, the illicit trade in chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos and orangutans, is the first report to analyze the scale and scope of the illegal trade and highlights the growing links to sophisticated transboundary crime networks which law enforcement networks are struggling to contain. Stolen Apes, which was produced by the United Nations Environment Programme through the Great Apes Survivor Partnership GRASP, estimates that a minimum of 22,218 great apes have been lost from the wild since 2005, either sold, killed during the hunt, or dying in captivity, with chimpanzees comprising 64% of that number. The report examines sophistication records, international trade databases, law enforcement reports, and arrival rates from sanctuaries and rehabilitation centers between 2005 and 2011. Apes are hunted in their own habitats, which are concentrated in Central and Western Africa, by sophisticated smugglers who transport them on private cargo planes using small airstrips in the African bush. Their destination is usually the Middle East and Asia. In countries like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Lebanon, great apes are purchased to display as showpieces in private gardens. Stolen Apes says that each great ape confiscated or confirmed in the illegal trade represents many more that died either during the capture or the trafficking process. Over the past 7 years, a minimum of 643 chimpanzees, 48 bonobos, 98 gorillas, and 1,019 orangutans are documented to have been captured from the wild for illegal trade. These figures are just the tip of the iceberg, and extrapolating from this research, the report estimates that at least 2,972 great apes are lost from the wild each year.
Even the most conservative estimates indicate that between 2005 and 2011, at least 21,000 chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos, and orangutans were taken out of the forests, either killed or passed on into illegal trade. It has become a multi-million-dollar business. It is not a haphazard byproduct anymore of the bushmeat crisis. It has become its own sophisticated network with growing links to organized crime. Later this week, and certainly in the news all the time, particularly here in Kenya, we talk about ivory, the sophisticated organized crime networks that drive the ivory trade and the rhino horn trade. There are very clear parallels between those trades and the one that is developing around great apes now. There are not enough great apes in the world to sustain this kind of offtake. You cannot lose 21,000 great apes from the forest and not have the forest suffer, not have the species dramatically suffer. And it has become a system of standing orders. A great many are going to markets in the Middle East and to Asia. In a 2-year period, China imported over 130 chimpanzees and 10 gorillas out of Guinea using forged CITES permits. That's shocking enough, except there are no gorillas in Guinea. Those gorillas had to be imported from someplace else to Guinea to then be exported onto China. You say there's a very sophisticated network now that has grown up around this, and quite often it is intertwined with other illegal trade. It is closely associated with the drug trade, the arms trade, laundered money trade. These are being bundled together now, along with ivory and other wildlife contraband, and being moved out collectively. And great apes do bring a great price. The prices vary wildly, but in China, $24,000 is the price for a chimpanzee imported from Africa. A gorilla is almost $40,000. It is worth the risk if you are a poacher for that kind of a payoff. If you are a trader, there is a payday. And this is something we have to counter before it becomes the big business and a further driver towards extinction that the great apes face.
All great apes are endangered and protected under the Convention on International Trade and Endangered Species CITES as Appendix 1 animals. Yet stolen apes reveals that the illegal trade has shifted from being a byproduct of traditional conservation threats, such as deforestation, mining and bushmeat hunting, to a more sophisticated business driven by demand from international markets. These markets include the tourist entertainment industry, disreputable zoos and wealthy individuals who want exotic pets as status symbols. Great apes are used to attract tourists to entertainment facilities such as amusement parks and circuses. They are even used in tourist photo sessions on Mediterranean beaches and boxing matches in Asian safari parks. Since 2007, standing orders from zoos and private owners in Asia have spurred the export of over 130 chimpanzees and 10 gorillas under falsified permits from Guinea alone, an enterprise that requires a coordinated trading network through Central and West Africa. The illicit trade is increasingly linked to organized crime, and sophisticated transboundary networks now move great apes along with other contraband such as ivory, arms, drugs, rhino horn, and laundered money. Profit margins are high for the criminal networks. The report found that a poacher may sell a live chimpanzee for $50, whereas the middleman will resell that same chimpanzee at a markup of as much as 400%. Orangutans can fetch $1,000 at resale, and gorillas illegally sold to a zoo in Malaysia in 2002 reportedly went for $400,000 each. Law enforcement efforts lag far behind the rate of illegal trade. Only 27 arrests were made in Africa and Asia in connection with great ape trade between 2005 and 2011, and 1/4 of the arrests were never prosecuted.
That's exactly the problem. We have a situation right now, especially in Malaysia, but partly in Indonesia, and also partly in Cameroon, actually, amazingly. There's still some good forest left, even in Malaysia. A lot of this forest is community land. In the Malaysian constitution, there's no provision to keep a forest as an individual for conservation purposes. You can keep your land, but you're supposed to develop it. Now these people want to keep it, and they're thinking of doing a carbon project, but there's no legal framework for that. So we basically will subcontract a legal study to see how can a private landowner or a community keep conservation forests and ultimately benefit from carbon payments. Now going back to Africa, and the cross-river area shared between Nigeria and Cameroon, we have the same situation. We have community lands. Sometimes it's not clear and government just grabs the land. I think the Kenyans know that very well. And elections are coming up soon. But we have exactly the same. There are huge proposals from the multinationals to develop oil palm in these areas. At the same time, these are the very important areas for cross-river conservation. We have done a red feasibility study there and finalized it last year. And we did it because we want to force the government to do a proper land use planning process. Most often it's exactly what you say. There's no transparent process. There's no stakeholder consultation. You just see there's an agreement between the government and a multinational, and land is given away. There's no alternative scenario. So with our work, and of course we lobby for it, we try to encourage the government. And actually what we did in Cameroon, we finished up the red feasibility, and then we convened a number or sequence of high-level meetings with the ministry to say, before you take any decision on a concession, these are the technical steps to do a proper land use planning process, including consultations with the communities. You have to do this, and then you decide what is the best area for palm oil expansion, what's the best area for conservation, what's the best area for tourism, what's the best area for water towers. But at the end, of course, yeah, it's the government deciding.
In 2009, one of our partners, Conservation International, released a report that indicated that 81% of the world's major armed conflicts occur within the 34 most biologically diverse areas in the world. And those conflicts have occurred since the 1950s and seemingly could only be getting worse, it's possible. So it's very important that we understand the foundations and what is causing these resource rich areas, especially in terms of, from our perspective, great ape habitat, to be under severe conflict and often protracted conflict.